You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Hi, it's Rich here. Thanks for joining us. We've got a little podcast extra for you. I was invited onto BBC Radio Newcastle on Friday night to join Simon Pryde and former Newcastle player Olivier Bernard in previewing Forest's match against the Geordies on Sunday.
Let's talk about Forest now, who are up against Newcastle, of course, on Sunday. And we can speak to Rich Ferraro, editor of 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. Rich, good evening.
Good evening to you.
Thank you very much indeed for speaking to us this evening. It's probably the last thing you feel like doing after last night, Rich. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, let's just say that when I first got the call from your producer, I was more enthusiastic about it than I have been today.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that first briefly, then we'll move on. I mean, because obviously, you were still in the game, still in the tie, until Villa got those goals in quick succession. But what did you feel about the performance last night?
Oh, I mean, it's a step too far. We've got a relatively small squad in terms of players who've got significant amounts of experience. I think it's also worth pointing out for Newcastle that whatever worries they may have had about the game, you're getting us at a good time because we've lost 7 players to injury in the last 5 matches before tonight, last night rather. So yeah, it's just feeling like the season's catching up with us a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one big incentive, I mean, if Forest had another 3 points and were definitely safe, and they look like they're going to be safe anyway, of course they do, but that might have made a bit of a difference, and then it might just have been a case of seeing out the season. As it is, there's still that incentive, isn't there, just to make sure that they kind of, get over the line, and yeah, they can overtake Newcastle in the process as well.
Well, that would be nice, wouldn't it? I mean, it's still possible for Forest to qualify for Europe, apparently. I'm not sure what the odds are on that. But I'm not holding out much hope for that. But certainly until it's mathematically safe, which hopefully it will be by Sunday evening, then you can't count any chickens, can you?
And what? So how will they? How do you feel that they'll approach the game then on Sunday?
Well, the big worry is that we've got a bit of a deficit in midfield now. Ibrahim Sangare has been outstanding this season. He's the tempo setter in midfield. And then, of course, Morgan Gibbs-White is the player who the team is built around. So with those 2 missing and Bruno Guimaraes back for Newcastle, it does make me worry quite a lot.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How worried do you think Nottingham Forest are to play against Newcastle?
If at all.
Well, I mean, my question, obviously I'm not a player and you have been, so my question would be how psychologically damaging was the way in which we lost last night? The players are kind of on their knees physically, and the question being how damaging has it been mentally, emotionally and psychologically? So I'm hoping that Vitor Pereira's kind of got enough alchemy to be able to, because going back to what Bill said with Michael Carrick, he came in with nothing to lose. United were looking terrible. Same with Vitor Pereira. We were heading down, sinking like a stone until Pereira came in. And so he's got to work that magic again.
Yeah, it is. It's all a question of dynamics. The same way the dynamics changed when Carrick arrived at Man United. I think for Forest, he's been exactly the same.
The question is, he's been there a while now. They'll probably be looking to get rid of him, won't they? I mean, it's time for a change. Surely, Rich.
Very droll. Yeah.
Do you think he will be there next season and beyond even?
I don't know. The rumour is that Forest have got an interest in Marco Silva, and while that sounds a bit fantastical, it's worth pointing out that the thing that Vitor Pereira and Marco Silva have in common isn't just being Portuguese. So they've both worked with and have a very good relationship with the club owner. And for all that the owner is known as being this kind of volatile person, he's doing everything he can to make the club successful. So he will make the decision that he thinks is right. Doesn't always get it right, as we've seen, but he is absolutely passionate about that.
Yeah, so even if it's a bit ruthless, he'll do it anyway. I also wanted to ask you about Elliot Anderson, because of course Newcastle fans still sort of follow his progress. Do you think he's going to leave in the summer? Where do you think he'll go?
I mean, I think we're resigned to it, and also now that we know we're not going to have Europe next season, he probably won't be the only one. Elliot has been an absolute joy to have at the club because I guess I've had this impression that Newcastle fans thought this anyway, is that he's not only a fine young player, he's a fine young man. And of course, having suffered the worst thing that any young man can suffer recently with losing his mum, I suspect that he's really going to be determined for the rest of this season and in the summer for England to play as well as he can. And of course, that means that Forest have to sell. At least we can ask for as good a price as possible, and hopefully that will help ease those PSR or squad cost rules worries. But we might also have to sell another one, and I would imagine that Murillo's probably most likely after him.
Okay. Rich, thanks ever so much for that. Good to hear from you. Thanks for coming on the show tonight. That's Rich Ferraro, who's editor of 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Thank you to Simon and Olivier for having me, and thank you very much for listening to this little podcast extra. Baz and Katie will be back on Sunday night with a match report after Forest's match against Newcastle, and fingers crossed that we'll be safe from the drop by the time you hear that. In the meantime, thank you very much for listening to 1865. Come on, you Reds.